These days, the Naples Players puts on its productions in the sparkling state-of-the-art Sugden Community Theater, located on Naples' revitalized Fifth Avenue South. The $6 million facility, which opened in 1998, is one any professional theater company would be proud to call home. That it was built through the efforts of volunteers, those same volunteers who continue to act, sing, and dance their hearts out on stage, is truly remarkable. Volunteers have been at the heart of the Players since a small group of theatrically minded residents decided Naples needed its own live theater. In 1953, that group mounted its first production, a one-night performance of I Remember Mama, presented at what's now the Gulfview Middle School. The rave review the show received in the Miami Herald inspired the group to keep going. Over the years, the Players has taken on every sort of play, from Shakespeare to melodrama and from comedy to serious drama. Musicals were always favorites, and the group has presented scores of different ones, both serious and lighthearted. Finding a place to perform, however, was the greatest challenge. The Players moved from schools to storefronts, eventually settling into an old movie theater on Goodlet Road in the mid-1980s. By the early 90s, however, things began to change. The building of the Sugden, spearheaded by then board president Ted Tobey, brought about numerous changes for the community theater troupe. Theater has now become big business, a business overseen by executive director Jim Rideout, artistic director Dallas Dunnigan, and a full staff of more than a dozen. And two stages, the 324-seat Blackburn Hall and the more intimate 90-seat Tobey Studio Theater, mean ambitious seasons of 11 productions each year.
The two different stages, of course, are different, but I think you have to treat them equally. They're of equal importance, and they take really the same amount of time to put a production up. It may look like the sets are a little simpler or the props are a little simpler, but you're still dealing with the same process. And that process has equal importance no matter what show you're doing. So the only difference is that now we're doing 2 and 3 productions at a time, so you're not just putting one up and then starting the next one. You're putting one up and one's running and one's in rehearsal. So the double spaces do keep you hopping, do keep you moving, keep the volunteers very busy. But I think they're both terrific spaces to work in.
Putting on shows is, of course, what the Naples Players is all about. But just what does that entail? A lot. And it all begins a year in advance with the Play Selection Committee, a group of volunteer members who help decide what plays the group will present.
And that group of people spends 2 to 3 months reading 35 to 40 plays and 10 to 20 musicals, and then they sit down and we actually talk about where those musicals and plays will fit in the season, and can we do them technically, or do we have casts for them, how do they look together as a group.
The Players annually presents 3 musicals, one in the summer, one in the fall, and one in midwinter. For the big winter musical during its 50th anniversary season, the group chose Cole Porter's popular classic, Kiss Me Kate, an ambitious undertaking because of all the elements involved.
Well, it takes a good team of directors and designers. You have a musical director, choreographer, and then a stage director. Sometimes those combinations are combined into one person in a variety of forms, but mostly it's a 3-person team. Then we have to put an orchestra together, and of course you put your cast together. And it takes a lot of pre-coordination. It takes a little bit more pre-coordination than you would ordinarily do with a play, for instance, because you're dealing with choosing vocal ranges and orchestra members, you're dealing with how people dance, you're dealing with the overall stage picture. And musicals, for the most part, are bigger than plays. They have multiple set locations. They have usually a much bigger costume group to have to put on people and that sort of thing. So it's a big effort.
Once the team is in place, focus turns to assembling a cast. Because the Players uses amateur volunteer actors, finding the right people, who are also willing to volunteer 3 hours a night, 5 nights a week just for rehearsals, can be daunting.
As a director, the production, you have an idea of where the production is going to go and who you're looking for and that sort of thing. But when you go into the audition room, that whole process can change. If somebody walks in the door that's different than you thought, but has some qualities that you like, the whole focus of the show may change a little bit. So the show gets cast, And then you really sit down and start really doing the pre-planning on what is this person going to wear, how is this person going to act and move, and how you're going to handle the production.
While the would-be actors are preparing and auditioning, work is already being done behind the scenes by technical director Michael Bagese and his corps of volunteer set builders.
The set designer starts well before an actor ever is even chosen for a role. The set designer and the choreographer and the directors have met previous and have come up with a concept for a show and have started design work for a show previous to any auditions happening. Kiss Me Kate has about 7 different scene looks, but some of those scenes are used several different times within the structure of the musical. The pieces, there's probably about 16 to 20 different actual pieces that had to be designed that all work together to make up some of the different scenic looks. So it's like a big jigsaw puzzle for musicals usually. One piece will have to work with one scene, and then that same piece might have to work in another scene with different pieces. So it's kind of a balancing act a lot of times.
2, 1. A married life, may all be well.
At this point, the theater becomes a beehive of activity.
My person's got to know a silver lining. Still lifeless is my wife.
Actors are in the upstairs rooms rehearsing lines, practicing songs and dance routines, and trying on costumes. Meanwhile, the shop area downstairs is filled with the sounds of hammers, saws, grinders, and shop volunteers and staff shouting out instructions to each other. Their job is to build something temporary that needs to appear permanent and sometimes dozens of years old.
Well, there's a lot of painting tricks that we use. We call them faux painting techniques that we use. And those are old standard techniques that have been used for down through the ages. And then there's a lot of new techniques that have just in the past 50 years or so with new materials, like styrofoam is one of my favorite things to use. It's very light and cheap and inexpensive, and you can shape it and mold it and carve it into just about anything you want. And you can create all kinds of strange looking things up on stage, everything from bricks to logs to concrete to stone walls, and the audience doesn't know the difference from, the real thing to this piece of styrofoam if you paint it well enough.
The actors move onto the stage, sound and lights are added, and finally, it's time for opening night. Another opening, another show. And then it's time to start all over again, just for the love of it. That's what the Players has been doing, and doing successfully, for 50 years. The greatest challenge facing the group now, ironically, is space. With overlapping rehearsal and production schedules and an exponentially expanding children's program, even the spacious new Sugden is growing crowded. And that's not even considering the plans to grow the organization itself.
I always like to see us grow in the product that we try to do. I want us to never say, we can't do that play. I want us to grow in terms of talent and organization so that anything we want to do, we can do. I'd like to see our children's program flourish so that it is providing actors as adults, as well as giving every child in this community a chance to experience theater from a performing point of view.
The success is leading the Players to new campaigns to build an endowment and to expand the Sugden or to find additional performance space. The group is also looking at additional programs, both in-house and as outreach to the community. Daunting undertakings, but knowing the Players, they'll succeed again. In half a century, the Naples Players has proved itself the little theater company that could. Year after year, its dedicated volunteers, accompanied now by an equally committed staff, do their best to entertain, educate, and sometimes even enlighten. It may not be Broadway, but the folks who make up the Naples Players aren't concerned about that. Their passion is theater, and their commitment is to sharing that love with their community. Happily for the rest of us, they do it exceedingly well. For Expressions, I'm Janina Birtolo.